Hey guys, this is TwoGun with my Week 5 recap. This week was a good old-fashioned the chalk smashes and TwoGun gets just annihilated type of week. Uh, you can see my winnings in this $4,400 entry tournament. And you can see how many entries I had. If you do some quick multiplication, you could realize just in this turn alone, it was not good for me. Let's go back and look at the leaderboard. Whenever you see this type of ownership in the top winners lineup, that's generally not good for me. But I'm going to point out that just because my style is contrarian, it doesn't mean that all the idiots or whatever are the ones that just play a lot of chalk. Because these guys that are at the top of this week, they're all like big time pros, bigger pros than me even in some ways. So it's worth looking at their lineups and seeing what they did. Dealing with this week now in these high stakes tournaments, sometimes they get really chalky. Madison was 73% owned. I had Madison in like 68% of my lineups, and I technically underowned him. I mean, it didn't really matter, 68 versus 73, but it just goes to show how chalky he was. What really got me was Devontae Adams being 42% owned. I only had him actually in one lineup. I just had him in my Aaron Rodgers stack, but and that stack didn't even cash. That stuff was not good for me. But yeah, in this, you can look at the winners lineup. He just did a simple Brady Brown stack. It's always a guess which Brady got, which his receivers went off, and it was Evans and Brown this time. He just used Brown and used Gesicki as a comeback, which doesn't really matter. He went, I guess technically Fournette too was a part of that stack. And then he went with basic Madison chalk, and he also used Robinson, as another running back who's, he kind of popped up on everyone's list. And then he just decided to kind of do another mini game stack with the chalk Devontae Adams and Jamar Chase, and basically it all worked out. It's kind of just almost like a perfect lineup. So congrats to Chipotle Addict. We can also look at Utica. He's another, big time pro. He went with a Herbert stack with Herbert, Williams, and Cook, and you kind of knew Williams was going to be low owned because he's just kind of really high priced, but he still went off, so it was worth it. I didn't use Williams on DraftKings, unfortunately. I had a Herbert stack on FanDuel, but I didn't use Williams, so whoops. And he did not use a bring back because Cleveland was kind of tough. I probably would have used Odell, which saw where that got me. And then he just decided to use Adams and Brown as fill-ins, and Boyd wasn't any good. You see, they both did these little mini game stacks. The Packers game, which is interesting, and then you just kind of went with these two chalk running backs, and that was good enough for second. Which again, huge drop off from second and first, but it was it's still a good lineup, and he actually got third too with the Brady lineup. He did Brady, Brown, and Brace, so he double stacked as well. And he also did a comeback. None of the comebacks were really that great with Miami, but he did that with Waddle. And like the others, he did a little mini stack with Chase and Adams. And then he went slightly contrarian with the Zeke, and maybe, I don't know if he did the Cowboys Zeke as an intentional stack or it just kind of worked out that way. But that was just another lineup. So sometimes, it's just worth looking at these other pros lineups. You can learn a few things. You can see that there's kind of been becoming more of a trend to have like your main stack and have kind of like a mini game stack with the Chase and Devontae Adams mini game stack was clearly clearly a winner this week. And this lineup is similar to Utica. This Papa Gates is a different guy, but he had a similar-ish lineup, but he went different in tight end and defense, so it's slightly worse. You can look at some of my lineups. They not. Another thing I'm going to point out is you can see these high scores. Generally, whenever it's a high-scoring week like this, kind of my contrarian style is just not going to win because I really kind of need the chalk to not smash. I need the chalk to brick, and that way my pivots do better. It's kind of like in this case, like the amount of I had, percentage-wise, I had as much, I had about 50% DeAndre Hopkins and 8% Devontae Adams, and the public had it flip-flopped, and the public clearly won again. So that's bad for me. So they have really high scoring lineups, and I did not partake in that. Um, you know, winning chalk fest there. I mean, I had Madison, but that's about it. So you look at some of my lineups. Here's my Brady lineup. I did with Evans and Bray. So kind of the same thing these guys did with in a comeback. But instead of doing say Devontae Adams, I did Madison and Ezekiel Elliott. They were fine, but I used some of my kind of core guys like Robinson, no good. I just happen to have Thielen in this lineup. Kind of double stack the the Vikings offense, but Thielen didn't do much, so that did not work out. This Daniel Jones got injured. Galladay got injured. Obviously, Tony was the one good core play that really went off, but not enough to save me. I used him in a lot of lineups. He just was terrible. Even though the game was really high scoring, it just somehow, Njoku was the guy that ends up with a 30-plus game, not Beckham. I don't know. It's just this was not my week. But you can see I kind of this was kind of a big game stack where I did Giants here, and then I did two of the Cowboys. Obviously, Zeke was great. Schultz was okay, and then I just kind of filled in with some running back chalk that everyone else had. Another line. Here's my Aaron Rodgers lineup. I actually double stacked him with Cobb as well, which to get a little contrarian, but that did not work out. I did not do any comebacks in this one. I don't have Jamar Chase, which is unfortunate. Of course, I could use Boyd, which wouldn't have been good. But Ricky Seals-Jones was actually a decent take by me to free up some cap space. And then I just used a variety of core plays to fill it in, like AJ Brown, DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins was actually okay, but not nearly as good as Devontae Adams. And then I just had Josh Jacobs, a little contrarian at running back, didn't really work. Wasn't terrible though. And then the Chargers defense, which was surprisingly bad. So you can kind of see how I did so much worse than everyone else. It was mainly because my percentage on Hopkins and Adams was split versus the public. I didn't have any Jamar Chase. It just chalk just kind of even my few plays that some of my obviously my core plays were terrible, like Beckham and Allen Robinson, whereas other chalk was good. So even if I had a few decent core plays like Tony, it just didn't matter because there's just so many good chalk plays out there that it just did not matter. So anyways, hopefully next week will be better. I'll be talking about the Deuces Wild at FanDuel, which is another, it's like $2,200 entry tournament. I'll have a good amount of entries in that. $1 million first place prize. We'll see if I can win it next week. Probably not, but who knows.